Right, I'm here with JJ Koczan from the Obelisk, the legend of the scene, a man who's written more words about stoner rock than most people have written about anything in their life. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the invitation to be on, and thank you for the nice introduction. I don't know. I'm sure there are people who have written more about stoner rock than me. There are people who've written books about it.
But not on a daily basis, I guess.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. What about no? All right. Wait a second. Let's talk about this because there were sites. Stonerrock.com had writers, though they had multiple writers. Hellride has people who've been around for however long. I don't know. I try to be wary of that kind of thing. There's no way. I don't know. And maybe it's the scale. Things like legend of the scene. There's no way that's true. John Garcia is a legend of the scene. I'm a guy who fucking blogs. That's it's just not. It's very nice of you to say. It's not at all how I
suppose we're both wary of that tag then, because I've got it a few times and I do jack shit worth getting that called over. So I'm interrupting you at work at 11 a.m. over in Massachusetts.
Yes, sir. I'm right outside of Boston. Maybe 20 minutes outside of Boston. So this is my work day. It's obviously a very productive, very useful day at my square job. It's okay. I wasn't really planning on doing much of anything today anyway.
Throw us a few bands from Massachusetts that we might like to hear.
Okay, Gozu, of course, right? How would you not? Do you know?
Oh, we've got them on last week's cast anyway, so we know all about.
Okay, Gozu, yeah. Did you talk to Mark?
Well, we just played a track.
Oh,
but we'll get them on in the future.
Okay, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, if you can, hit those guys up. Mark will do most of the talking. Doug does most of the online trolling, which is hilarious. He's super, very insightful, very thoughtful guy. And of course, their new record's great. I don't know what track he played, but I love that album, Revival. Phantom Glue have a new record out that I actually just got. I haven't even had the chance to listen to it, but their last stuff was really good. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. Who else from Boston? The Heave Ho, Roadsaw, of course. Faces of Bayon, if you like Death Doom. They do it with just a little bit of stoner rock edge, little psychedelia thrown in, very cool. Of course, bands like Mourn, and I don't know, the list goes on. There are many bands. Owl something, I don't know. A lot of bands. And I guess I don't really think of them as a Massachusetts band anymore because Jack was living in New York and Nick was living in Providence and then Germany while Matt was still around here. But I mean, Elder, right, are kind of the kings at this point.
They slayed it at Desertfest. Well, I'm going by word of mouth because I was a bit too drunk to go into that. There's not been a bad word said about their performance, and I think it was more packed than it ever was for Electric Wizard that day.
It's amazing how much that band has come up. Lore was brilliant. It was brilliant, but I feel like in 3 or 4 years, you're going to start to see a lot of bands that sound like Elder.
Yeah. I mean, rightly so that it got the top place of the readers poll on your site.
Absolutely. There was never any question, really. I actually had a pretty fierce inner debate between Lore and Acid King's Middle of Nowhere, Center of Everywhere when I was putting together my own list. Because I think Lore was probably a better achievement, but I haven't stopped listening to that Acid King record. I love it. It's just so warm and it just pulls you in so much that just in terms of what I'm going to put on the average day, I'll put that on any day of the week. But yeah, no, Lore just wound up being undeniable. And I mean, good for them. The fact that band not only put out that record, not only wrote that record, made it and put it out, but then they haven't stopped touring since. I have nothing but respect and admiration for those guys, and they're great guys to boot.
We've just mentioned one of the better albums of last year. What from this year has caught your attention?
Oh, let me bring up my notes. I keep a running list of albums of the year candidates because I forget. There's a lot of stuff and I will forget it. The Mars Red Sky is an obvious one. Apex 3, Praise for the Burning Soul. That actually just came out in the States. It came out in March, I think it was, in Europe. And apparently I was going by the European release date. But that album is brilliant. But I'm a total dork for that band. and have loved everything they've done. So, the Zun record, which was Gary Arce from Yawning Man and John Garcia and Sarah Timms from Ides of Gemini and Black Math Horseman. Did you hear that record?
I've heard a few tracks off it. I haven't heard it in full just yet.
Okay. Well, John Garcia and Sarah Timms, they switch off vocals over basically like sort of these vast Gary Arce beautiful guitar soundscapes. That's been like kind of a big one on repeat for me. The Gozu record, the Greenleaf record, my God, blew me away. I liked the last one well enough, but Rise Above the Meadow really sort of took me back. Kazasui, Beast Wars, It's Not Night, It's Space, Lord, Black Rainbows, another band who I think just keeps getting better and better, Black Rainbows. The Woe Fat album, the Elephant Tree record, my God.
Yeah, that's great. I think Pete Holland has been on the podcast more times than anyone else in various projects, and that album is great. That album's amazing.
As well he should. Pete is a charmer and a great guy, and that album, blew me out of the water completely. I felt like when they as they sort of dropped the screams a little bit and got into more depth of tone and melody, it really, really works. And their songwriting, man, they, even like, obviously you have a song like Aphotic Blues, which was just such a standout, but then they had, all the other tracks supporting it were really, really strong, and and the acoustic track, and yeah, man, what an album. I would say the new Foghound that's coming out is really good too. Ripple, I know Ripple is putting that out. And the new Mondo Drag is good, very proggy, a lot of keys. The new King Buffalo, who I think we were going to talk about. And actually, I don't know when it's coming out, but the new White, W-I-G-H-T. I'm a big funk and soul fan, so they have adopted that and worked it into like a heavy psychedelic context. That record, I feel, is right up my alley. It's great. I hope it comes out soon, because I'm dying to review it.
What else from the second half of the year are you looking forward to?
Whenever the Neurosis record gets here, that's my year. I haven't heard anything to this effect, but it would be nice if Color Haze, snuck another album out. I don't know if that's in the offing, but... Yeah,
the last one just came from nowhere.
Absolutely, right? To the highest gods we know, yeah.
Do you think the reason for that was due to She Said taking such a long time to come? This one they just snuck in unannounced?
I do, yeah. I think the fact that it took them, 4 years to put that record together, I think that sort of drove them. Once they had that studio built, and To the Highest Gods We Know wasn't nearly as expansive as She Said, right? She Said had the horns, and She Said had the strings, and She Said had these beautiful sweeping arrangements that To the Highest Gods We Know kind of worked in. I mean, right? That closing track on To the Highest Gods We Know had strings, but it also sort of stripped a lot away in a way that I think threw people for a loop, because it was simpler, but it also felt probably a little bit truer to what happens when that band gets in a room, sets up, and jams, which is what I liked about it a lot.
The title track certainly had a lot going for it. I mean, some people weren't too big a fan of it, but it was something different for sure.
And what's the second to last song? Call, I think? Stefan Kogluk's tone, man, it's just so beautiful. He starts playing that line and it's just doo doo doo, and it doesn't need anything else.
I think Circles was my favourite off that album, but there wasn't a bad track on it at all.
No, I agree.
You've been doing what you've been doing for about 6 years now, maybe 7?
Almost 7.5, yeah, 7.
So what have you seen with the whole Stoner Doom sludge psych scene? I mean, it's certainly grown. Do you think there's a rhyme or reason to that?
I do, actually, and I think a lot of it is generational. The people who were into circa 99 to 2003 era of heavy have kind of aged out or whatever. As that new generation has come up, they have really adopted that aesthetic. And you can see that at shows. There was a point at shows, maybe probably 5 years ago now, where all of a sudden everybody got younger. And people started showing up, which was even more amazing. And so social media, I think, is a huge plan. I know that's not even an insight at this point, but really, you can look at the heavy psych, heavy rock, stoner rock, whatever, doom scene worldwide, and it is like a pretty clear divide, like pre-Facebook and post-Facebook. Like there are entire bands who've come along who are good, but basically derivative, who have been able to find an audience, in part because this new generation doesn't know what was out before Facebook. So I think that's a huge play on it, but I think a lot of it is generational. But I mean, a lot of it also is sort of just the cycle of bands influencing bands and a new generation of bands as well. It hit a point where I think heavy rock got stale enough that a new generation was able to come along and revitalize it by sort of going back to its roots, which is how you get all these 70s influenced bands.
I think there's a lot of DIY ethic in it as well, where just about everyone in the scene, whether they've got a musical ounce of talent in their body or not, just wants to help each other out. It's a really close-knit community, and I think that draws a lot of people in.
To an extent, yeah, I would say that's probably true. I think that's definitely true in the UK. I mean, at least from what I've observed of how bands touring with other bands, somebody like John Davis starting a label to put out bands he's recording at his studio, like that sort of thing. There's definitely that edge. You know, the trade-off with a scene getting bigger like that too, though, is people sort of taking a more opportunistic approach. So bands forming, kind of screwing each other over and that kind of thing. So I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I think part of being in what's still basically an underground community is supporting that subculture, for lack of a better word. We're all a part of this thing, so let's make it stronger. Yeah, I agree with that.
So you just mentioned the UK a little bit there. What are some of your favourite bands coming out of the UK at the moment?
Well, we mentioned Elephantry, right? Who else? The UK. Actually, you know what? I was just before we jumped on, I was listening to the Slowmatics record again. I love that. Of course, Conan are utterly dominant. The new Wounded Kings is really good. A lot of the like sort of post-Orange Goblin UK sludge doesn't really, some of it has started to not really do it for me at this point. Obviously, I like Orange Goblin and I'm into that and all, but it just seems like that influence has hit a point where it's so widespread that it kind of
merges into one.
Yeah, it needs something else to spice it up. Like if you did Orange Goblin and tripped it out, or if you were going to do Orange Goblin and threw in something else with it. But people just, I'm generalizing obviously, but you get some bands that are just straight up like, yeah, we drink whiskey and write riffs. It's like, well, that's great, but here are 100 other bands from 2 towns away from you who do the exact same thing. So what else you got? But I mean, the UK scene is amazing. I think the work that Jake and Reese have done with Desertfest is unreal, both from like supporting their local scene, building that brand, and expanding. Obviously, Desertfest Berlin was always there, but Desertfest Athens and Desertfest Belgium now, and like it's unbelievable what those guys have started. I mean, and to look at all the festivals going on in Europe this fall, particularly from like as an American from a distance, watching that happen is unbelievable. It's beautiful, really. I mean, it's wonderful to see. And actually, we'll mention Stake while we're talking about UK bands. Stake, Stake are a really good example of a band who, clearly have an influence from a major act. Caius, right? Stake went to the desert to record their album for a reason, but they, brought something of themselves to it as well. I thought, anyway, on that record. That's a good example of a band of how to do it right. But yeah, man, the UK scene is it's just unbelievable.
So we've spent a good 20 minutes there talking about other bands. Let's talk about you a little bit. So
okay, let's not.
You've just had a book come out. What's the deal with that, man?
Yeah, it's a book. It's a little book. It's not a very big book. Tiny book. It's a collection of short stories and a couple poems. The project was pitched to me was, do you want to do this? And obviously, I've been writing since before I could read, and it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do, like, with my time, and it continues to pretty much be the only thing I ever want to do with my time. So obviously I was on board. That's kind of the dream is to get a book out, and so when the opportunity arose, I just kind of jumped on it and didn't really believe it until I had the box of books show up at my house. But, it's out now. Actually, I have some dealings with the post office on shipping, but other than that, it's out. It exists. I have a copy, so fuck it.
Where can people get that if they want it?
Oh, it's out through War Crime Recordings. Thank you. You're absolutely right. Should mention that. Yeah, it's warcrimerecordings.bigcartel.com.
It's all right about you being a terrible salesman. I mean, that's all I do, sell other people's stuff. So.
No, you were right. You were right on it, man. I was screwing up the plug. You made it happen, so thank you. I appreciate that. They pressed up 300 copies, and so far as I know, they're going at a decent rate. So I'm very pleased. Hopefully, we'll get rid of those and maybe do another pressing. And I haven't written fiction in a while, but have a few ideas for poetry collections, and have a children's book actually that I've been sitting on for a while that I might try to make happen next. But that's 2 or 3 years down the line.
I've heard rumblings you're doing guest vocals on an album.
Oh, no. That's firmly in the maybe department. I was asked by an old friend who we were just talking. He said, getting this new project together, would you be interested in doing some guest vocals for it? I mean, it's nothing there's nothing confirmed there. I'm not going to a studio yet, or maybe at all. It was just kind of something that came up that it took me aback because it's been so long. I think the last time I was actually in a band was probably 2012. So that's 4 solid years of not doing that. It was just something that surprised me to think about doing. Because at one point, so much of my day was spent thinking about it, and now none of my day is spent thinking about it. So either way, whether it happens or not, I was flattered to be asked, and it was something that caught me off guard a little bit.
What bands were you in back in the day?
Yeah, I was in a band called Megashira when I lived in New Jersey, and we were together 5 years. Give or take. I think we got together in 2005 and broke up in 2010. The guitar player, George, and the bass player, John, from Megashira have a new band called Tar Pit Boogie, who are good. But and then I kind of floundered in a couple bands after that, and then it just faded out. And when I moved, I haven't started anything since. Megashira did one record. It was called The Stark Arctic. If you can find it. I think All That's Heavy still has copies. I don't know if anyone's interested in seeking it out. I sang in the band, not much of a singer, kind of like screamy sludge stuff. And if we had it to do over today, I'd probably make the record shorter. But other than that, I'm pretty proud of it. Of what it did. We played some good shows, and we had a lot of fun while it lasted, so no complaints.
What was your musical history, when you were first getting into music through to getting into the stoner, psych, doom, sludge kind of thing? What path did you take?
It seems to me like a lot of people are punk rockers who kind of grew out of it. I was a metal kid. I was into metal. Although when I was, 10-ish, I stole 4 CDs from my older sister. It was Rollins' band, The End of Silence, COC, Blind, Suicidal Tendencies was one, The Art of Rebellion, and what's the other one? I don't know. Let's just say Master of Puppets. That was the first time that I consciously engaged with music, and since then it's kind of just been a major part of my life. I tend to identify things with songs in a way that's very fundamental to me. I'm sure I can't imagine I'm the only one in the universe who does this, but you hear a song and you start to associate it with a time and a place, and then that song becomes that time and place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So I have my summer records, and I have my winter records, and I have the record that's this part of sitting in traffic on the highway, and I have the record that's over here at the beach. It just sort of became a piece of who I was. But in terms of getting to stoner stuff, I came through metal. I listened to all the bullshit that the 90s had to offer, completely missed out on sleep, completely missed out on Caius until I got to college, which was 2000, 2001. And from there, I worked at my college radio station. The station was WSOU. I'm not going to give the college a plug because fuck them, but the radio station was great.
Let's give you a couple of minutes to slate the college.
It's a Catholic college run by complete piece of shit profiteers with zero integrity, zero desire to actually impart any sort of knowledge, and just complete fucking waste of time, rip-off, except for the radio station. And actually, there was one point where I got fired from the radio station, so then it was an absolute waste of time at that point.
What was the story there?
I did a radio show with a buddy of mine. We did a Saturday night show. It was like prime time Saturday slot. It was 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. And the guy is my best friend. I was hanging out with him this weekend, actually. He's, best friend I have to this day. Called the Dean of Arts and Sciences a pompous jackass, which he absolutely was. I mean, he was, you can't argue the fact, but it definitely got us fired. that was an adventure. And we were off for about 6 months before we got back, which, half a year of college was an eternity at the time. Doesn't seem like much now. But yeah, we fought that pretty hard. But yeah, no love for the school. But the radio station did introduce me to like a ton of just brilliant music. All the Man's Ruin stuff. Acid King, Alabama Thunder Pussy, Suplex, those bands, that pre-social media generation of heavy rock that I continue to love.
Is there one or a couple of bands that you can pinpoint as being the bands that got you into this scene?
Color Haze, Caius, Sabbath, obviously. Man, that really, like, at the time, got me into it. Dozer, Lowrider.
I mean, for me, it was Clutch and then Caius and then Monster Magnet. I mean, Sleep I didn't even touch for the first couple of years.
Clutch are big. Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, I can tell you the exact moment I first heard anything stoner rock based.
When was it?
I was walking down a street and I heard Big News 1 blasting out of someone's car window.
Wow. Just
walked over to the car. He was stopped at a traffic light and I just went, before you drive off, what is that? He told me, and then that was down the rabbit hole from that point.
That's amazing. That's a fucking awesome story, actually.
A kindly stranger I'll never meet again to this day.
Right, that's it. That's just a good Samaritan. That's amazing. My introduction was much clumsier. I mean, I remember the self-titled Clutch got played on the radio over here. Like, I remember hearing that at the time. It was like 95. And being like, yeah, that's kind of cool. And I remember hearing Neurosis early. Neurosis is another big one. Remember hearing Neurosis early and being like, I don't really know what's going on there. But like, as you sort of get older and get a little bit more context for these things, you start to appreciate it. But man, I missed it. I should have gone to see Caius when I was 14. I should have gone to see Sleep. I should have done all this shit. I just wasn't there.
I think a lot of people like that though. They didn't kind of get into it at the time, but Caius are one of those eternal, timeless bands. You can just listen to them today, and that it'll get you there,
I agree. The sort of internet Caius fanboyism has gotten very, very prevalent, but it's hard to argue with it, right? It's like, because you put those records on, and it's like, oh, they live up to that. And it's always, it's not something I put on all the time at this point, but something I consistently enjoy when I do put on. But Caius were a big band, Orange Goblin, Electric Wizard, to a lesser extent for me, and the aforementioned Man's Ruin stuff, Dozer, Acid King, Los Nadas, oh my god, Los Nadas, I love that band.
What's the deal with Los Nadas anyway? Are they completely done with, or are they disbanded?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Sergio brought them back at some point, even up to their last record, which was Nuevo Orden de la Libertad, which, sorry for my accent, anybody who speaks Spanish.
Sorry for my accent in general.
But, I mean, I love that record, and their first record, Delmar, I mean, you have the Desert Island discs, right? One of the 3 records you would listen to for the rest of your life. That's definitely one of mine, the first Nadas record. You're talking about Caius being timeless. That's even more for me. That record is just a pinnacle of what everything desert rock should be.
Los Nadas are one of those, they're a little bit more under the radar for most fans, but they're just every bit as good as Caius.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And their progression and sort of the take on social themes that they did with the last record was really just brilliantly done. And actually, I'm a big fan of Ararat, Sergio's post-Nadas band. The 3 quality records. The last one was gut-wrenchingly good. And actually, I just, maybe like last week, got his solo album on CD, and it's him and his brother plays piano, and he's playing it mostly acoustic, and it's just a collection of songs. It's maybe like 55 minutes long or something, but it's really, really good. Very personal sounding, very intimate, but like an utter joy to hear. It actually came out last year, but he doesn't really sell stuff outside of Argentina. His label, South American Sludge, I think is an imprint of Wee Wee Records. So, I don't know what the distribution is there, but I keep periodically checking to see if Sergio has opened an online store with international shipping so I can just blow all my money on everything he puts out, because I absolutely would.
Who are some of the bands that haven't received the love you think they deserve? Name a few bands that you can give a bit of a rub to.
I mean, I don't know that my endorsement is making or breaking anybody.
But you're on the Desertfest podcast. That's endorsement enough.
You're so right. You're so right. I've finally hit the big time after 7 years. And thank you again for having me on. Who's underrated? The Atomic Bitchwax are underrated. Gozu are underrated. Aluna are underrated from the UK.
Oh, they're fantastic. They're going to be something great. I mean, their first few albums have been great.
Yeah.
They're going to be fantastic in the next few years.
Yeah, I loved White Whorehound a lot. And I thought the way they built on that with Awakening the Forest was something pretty special. I'm very much looking forward to what they come out with recording with Chris Fielding. I'm looking forward to hearing his take on those tones and Sophie's vocals and just, dying to hear it. And great for them, the success they've had signing to Svart and all that. Thinking of UK bands, they're definitely something special. What else is underrated? Geezer, looking forward to what they do next. Oh, you know who has really sort of hit a chord with me is Atavismo, a Spanish psychedelic band, Podi, who used to be in Viaje 800. I don't even know how to spell it or say it. Viajea and then the number 800, who were like a very cool deserty, stonery band from Spain in sort of the aughts, the 90s and the aughts. But Atavismo is a newer band. They put out a sort of full-length EP-ish thing, I want to say the end of 2014, that has continued to sort of resonate with me. Very sort of serene, heavy psych, but soaked in atmosphere and vibe, and so cool. The new Cloudcatcher is something to keep an eye out for. A band from Denver, a trio who just absolutely fucking tear it up. They're doing like a take on like that upbeat Sabbathian blues kind of thing, but they prog it up a little bit, and it's nice. Curse the Sun from Connecticut are underrated. I've been digging Farflung. My God, the new Farflung came out today. Farflung White Hills, right? The two bands from the U.S. No one in the U.S. gives them the time of day, and they go to Europe and are huge, right? Farflung is definitely underrated. Yeah, no, man, it's all kind of underrated.
So who are some bands that kind of disappeared before their time that you were the most gutted about? I mean, obviously Sungrazer for just
No, Sungrazer was the first name that immediately came to my mind. Man, just heartbreaking. Absolutely, like that was a low point, I think, for last year was that news.
I think that was the low point, not even just our low point.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did lose Lemmy last year too, but yeah, specifically for like this realm, yeah, I agree 100%. I was devastated when they broke up. I thought the second Sungrazer record was just so special and so standout and so much them. I was fortunate enough to see them at Desertfest and at Roadburn. The dynamic they had on stage with the guitarist and the bassist sort of having a different kind of presence, and yeah, man, that was great. And of course, Rucker. I was in touch with Rucker a few times over the years, sort of talking about Sungrazer stuff, and in Seagal, whose debut I also loved, and was very, 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 very sad to hear about it, him passing away, and just completely a band who should have and could have been their generation's Color Haze.
I maintain to this day the best gig I've ever been to was Color Haze headlining, Rotor as main support, and Sungrazer as the first band on. That blew me away, and that was very early into my kind of stoner rock awakening.
Was that the first Up in Smoke tour?
Yeah, it was at the Underworld, I think, in 2011, 2012.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first Up in Smoke. Was those three. Sound of Liberation does that tour in the fest. But no, dude, that's an amazing show. Color Haze, Rotor, and Sungrazer. I mean, it's perfect, really. I mean, I don't know what more you could ask of a night than that. Especially, I guess Color Haze probably would have been playing stuff off She Said at that point.
I think they played Transformations.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Last time I saw Color Haze was Desertfest 2013. They're playing Psycho Las Vegas, which I'm going to try to go to, depending on what my work situation is at the time.
This is one of those things with Psycho Las Vegas. For years and years and years, we've been told in Europe by American fans, oh, you guys, you have the best festivals. You have this, you have that, you have the other.
Yep.
You guys have Psycho Las Vegas.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. For years and years, you have been told that Europe has it better for festivals, and it's true, and it remains true. Psycho Las Vegas is probably the first through and through heavy rock festival where Europe is right to be jealous of the U.S. The festival culture in the U.S. has a long, long, long way to go, but there are Like, there are very cool things being done. Erosion Fest in Montana, I'm looking at, with St. Vitus and the Skull headlining, and sort of all of this sort of congregation of bands from the West Coast and the Midwest coming together for something very cool. Maryland Doom Fest, the Maryland Doom scene has sort of, for years, done these under-attended, under-heralded, fucking awesome festivals. Think of Stoner Hands of Doom and any number of others. Vultures of Volume, which I went to last year. But Maryland Doomfest seems to be sort of stepping that up to a point where it's starting to get recognized, and rightly so. Of course, there are huger commercial festivals like Riot Fest, and Boston has a fuck ton of festivals, and it's not to where Europe is, and I don't know that the US has this sort of like cultural infrastructure to get there. But I think what you'll end up with is something, in the years to come, I think what you'll end up with is something a little bit different from what Europe offers, but with its own take, because that's kind of the creative cultural conversation between the US and Europe anyway, right? US sees Europe has something fucking awesome. Psycho Las Vegas sees Roadburn and goes, holy shit, let's do this. And then the US does it a little bit differently, fucks up the rules, and then Europe goes, what the hell? And answers back. And so I think that sort of exchange in Western culture is really important. It happens in music too, and art and everything. But with festivals, yeah, fucking the Psycho lineup, it's pretty unreal. I felt like the only thing missing was Neurosis. You're
going to like this because it's seamless as hell. Another event that's taking place in the US is the Obelisk all day.
You are a pro, man. You are. That's straight up. Yes, that is an event that is taking place in the United States. August 20th, the St. Vitus Bar in Brooklyn. I have been to venues on the East Coast. I have been to venues on the West Coast. I have been to venues in between. For my money, St. Vitus Bar is the best venue in this country. And this country is fucking expansive. I have been to awesome rooms. I'm not going to say anything against places like Sister Bar in Albuquerque or fucking wherever the hell it was in LA that I saw Torch in 2006. I'm not going to say anything bad about these spaces, but for my money, the St. Vitus Bar has it going in a way that nothing else can top. So I'm very fortunate that they were willing to give me a Saturday to put together this all-dayer, and I'm doubly fortunate to be able to bring a band like Mars Red Sky over from Europe, Snail coming out from the West Coast. Both of those bands, it'll be their first East Coast appearance. I have Funeral Horse from Texas, who I think are going to surprise a lot of people. King Buffalo, who we mentioned before. Kings Destroy, and Heavy Temple just got added, was it yesterday? Day before? I don't even know. Hopefully, it's a very fluid lineup. What I wanted to do in putting it together was create something and arrange the bands so that one feeds into the next, and sort of gives the day a sense of flow, so that by the end of it, you're kind of immersed. And I thought Mars Red Sky would be the perfect headliner for that, because what they're doing now is so able to draw the listener into their world that I felt very fortunate to be able to get them. I'll say that. And then they wound up doing Psycho as well, and they're gonna do a couple East Coast tour dates, and they're playing a festival in Toronto. So all the better.
How did it all come about anyway?
It was an idea I had kicked around, I don't know, for a couple years. Honestly, like, I'll make no bones about sort of being inspired by Roadburn, but I don't want to do what Psycho's doing. I don't want to do a huge event. I don't want to do a festival. I want to do an all-dayer. I want to have a party. So the Vitus Bar being on the smaller side, I think it's 300 max capacity. The Vitus Bar being on the smaller side is a big part of the vibe I want, because I want it to be like everybody's getting together to have a good time. I'm not looking for huge festival feel. So I started planning it before last August. I said, I want more than a year to do this, so I'm not scrambling and stressed out, which I am anyway at this point. But I feel like I maybe avoided some of it by hitting bands up a year ahead of time. So it's been a lot of planning, and it's been a lot of coordination to make it work, but it looks like it's going to happen. And, hopefully everybody shows up, and hopefully it goes well. I don't think it's the kind of thing I'll do every year, but maybe every other year. I feel like some festivals, some events being every year, it's like, you could probably get away with doing this biannually. So, I might do one in 2018. I might not. We'll see how this goes. Honestly, if I get there and it's a fucking disaster, I'll never do it again. Yeah. I'm not making any money doing this. It's not like I'm profiting off it or even attempting to. This is something I'm doing because I want to see the show. But yeah, I'm very, very excited. We're going to have food. I've been talking to Steve from King's Destroy is helping me out, as he has helped me out with a ton of shit, has helped me out with the book, helped me out with this. We're going to have food on hand, and I got a buddy who's going to record the sets, and there's a poster being designed, and I might make some Obelisk patches that I'm only going to sell at the all-dayer. So, it's going to be hopefully sort of low-key, hopefully cool vibe, but, I can't say enough about George and Dave from the St. Vitus Bar, who've been very, very open to my ideas and very sort of willing to indulge as I've been sort of putting this together. So it's been really good so far, and hopefully it works out all right.
All the stress will be worth it when it gets to the day, man.
Yeah, that's what they say. Honestly, it hasn't been that much stress. I've had some back and forth that has been unfortunate, but the bulk of the dealings I've had have been unbelievably easy. Like, hit me up and they were like, "Oh, can we play your thing?" And I was like, "Yes." The day I announced I was doing an all-dayer, Snail was like, "We want to come to the East Coast and play." That sort of outpouring of love of bands being willing to do something like that. Like, Snail are from the West Coast. They live in LA and Seattle, or, California and Washington anyway. And so to have them be like, "We want to do this. We want to travel to the East Coast, across the entire country and play your shitty little thing," is unbelievable to me. What you were saying before about this community supporting itself, I think that's the most heartwarming instance of it I've had, in the 7 years that I've been doing the Obelisk. So yeah, going from that, I don't think there's any way I'm going to come out of it not pleased. And the response from people online as I've been announcing bands has been really good. Hopefully it just keeps going the way it's going.
What would be your dream all-dayer if you could get all the cogs in place?
Color Haze headlines. I don't know. Just let them play for 8 hours. No, I don't know. I've been through sort of the lineups in my head that like I could put together that I wanted to get. But actually, this is pretty close. I have one band left to announce who actually got announced mistakenly on Ticketfly today, but we since took it down. I have one band left to announce, and for the Desertfest podcast listeners, I'll say they're from the Netherlands. But I'm going to announce them next month, and I feel like at that point, it's a pretty complete picture of what I want it to be. My only regret is that I have no room for Gozu or Moss Generator, both of whom I love as bands and as people. I mean, Tony Reed I know better than the other guys, but...
maybe in 2018.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's something to hope for next time. But every time I put an announcement up about someone being added, I get a response back from people saying, "We would love to play if you need a band if someone drops out." Bands like Beals of Fuzz and the Golden Grass and there's just so much at this point. But I feel like what I have managed to get together is a lineup that has a logical progression through it. And I'm most pleased about that.
One of the bands you've got on this year is King Buffalo. Tell us about them.
King Buffalo are from Rochester, New York. They were sort of born out of a prior rock band called Velvet Elvis, who released an LP a couple of years ago. I want to say maybe 2011, 2012. That really sort of hit home with me for just like the quality of its songwriting and, I don't know, the fullness of its sound and sort of what it was bringing to the table. That band broke up, as bands do, and King Buffalo got together, released their demo 2014 maybe, and just was like an immediate in my head. They were a four-piece at the time and with dual vocals and really sort of resonated. But their album, they're now a trio, and their album is coming out in August. Actually, it's August 5th is the release date. They're putting it out. Their bass player Dan Reynolds did the artwork. And, I hadn't heard the record when I said, I want you guys to play. But I have seen them live. I saw them with All Them Witches in Pennsylvania, maybe last year or the year before. They blew me away. They're a trio that not a lot of people know yet, but who I think really bring something interesting to the table sound-wise and sort of build on that heavy psychedelic blues feel that at this point is, in the U.S. at least, is most relatable to All Them Witches, but playing off that with different influences and doing something of their own, and especially doing that on their first record is doubly impressive to me. And their songs are spacious and laid back and just very, very, very fluid in how they're done. Along with the Elephant Tree, it's one of those records that I can't stop listening to. Actually, probably those two are fighting it out for debut of the year in my eyes at this point. And this year has had some very, very good debut albums. I was very pleased that they said yes to doing it, and they're doing a tour around around the release. And so far as I know, the Obelisk All Dayer will actually be the last date of that tour. So they're going to close out a tour at that show. And you know, that just makes it more special for me, frankly. They're great guys, and they're a great band that I feel like people probably will know more about by the time next year gets here than they know about now. But I was very happy to have them on board. And sort of, I know we're going to play a King Buffalo track, but I want to say pretty much the same applies to Heavy Temple, who are a trio from Philly who are actually opening the show. It's going to be Heavy Temple and King Buffalo are the first two bands, I think, and they're just fantastic. They have a new EP in the can that is fuzzy and just righteous and the beginning of a very unique, let's not say unique, very individual songwriting process. Not saying Heavy Temple or derivative, I just like to shy away from using the word unique, but both very special bands. And for King Buffalo, they had a split with Les Betres on STB Records last year. That was their first recording as a trio, but I think this album, it's called Orion, blows it out of the water.
Well, thank you very much for your time,
Thank
JJ.
you, Tom. I appreciate you doing it. I appreciate you having me on. It's great to talk. I'm sorry I ran my mouth for a very long time.
That's absolutely fine, man. So you can catch JJ's writing at theobelisk.net. I know it's too modest to mention it. Where can you get the book again, just to remind people?
warcrimerecordings.bigcartel.com.
And where can you buy tickets to the All Day?
The St. Vitus Bar website has a link. It's also on Ticketfly. If you do a search for the Obelisk All Day, it will come up. If you go to my site, the link is on the top post. It's right there.
Right, so we're going to play you out with King Buffalo's Orion, as long as they let us. Thank you very much for your time, JJ. You take it easy.
Thanks, Tom.